everyone, I'm Lavanya from YourPedia, and today we are going to discuss something and everything you need to know about writing task 2. The major focus of this video is actually going to be the structure. How do you actually frame an essay in IELTS? That is a question that many students have. You all know that you're going to write 250 words at a minimum, right? This is an essay, and you're given 40 minutes to do this. Now, there are a variety of questions, and we have actually already covered the different types of questions you may encounter in IELTS and how many body paragraphs you have to make for that, and how do you actually answer it. What do you need to write in that content? That has already been covered. You can watch the previous video for that. Now, this video specifically is just about the structure. You know you're going to make at least 4 body paragraphs in your IELTS essay. The first one is going to be an introduction. Then there are going to be 2 body paragraphs, BB1 and BB2. Then you need to write a conclusion. Now, while you're doing this, how do you actually know what to write in introduction? What do you write, or how do you frame your body paragraphs? And also, the most important, what do you actually write in a conclusion? That is what we're going to cover in today's class. So let us start with it. Before we actually get into all the nitty-gritty of it, let us actually take a look at a question, and then as we are answering it, I will actually explain it to you how many different parts of it and how do you actually, word out, how do you structure a different paragraph in an essay. So the question that is written here is a sample IELTS question, very commonly written as first there is a background statement and then there is a crux of the question. So background statement is homeschooling belongs to the past and is unacceptable in the modern society. They're talking about homeschooling, they're talking about how relevant it is in the modern society. The question is, to what extent do you agree or disagree with the statement? Now, if you had watched the previous video that I posted before, you would know that this question is an opinion essay. So you need to tell your opinion. To what extent do you agree or disagree? As in, you need to make sure that you have a very clear stand. Do you 70% agree or 30% agree? And or maybe you completely hate school homeschooling. It is not fit for modern society, or vice versa. Anything is possible, and you have the complete freedom to choose whatever side you want to. Now, let's actually get to writing that essay out. Now, you know the question. It is about homeschooling and if it's acceptable in the modern society. You know that you have to either agree or disagree with the statement, or you can go for a 70-30, 50-50 approach. That is also allowed. So the first thing you're going to write in any essay for IELTS is an introduction. The introductory paragraph is always on at least 3 to 4 sentences long, and there are 3 different parts in it. The first is a general statement, then it is followed by a question reframed, and then a thesis statement. It might sound really complex, but it's actually the easiest and the most foolproof way of writing an introduction in IELTS. As the word says, in every essay, you need to first of all introduce the topic, and only then can you actually divulge into it. While you're introducing the topic, the thing about IELTS is that, as you saw with the question before, it's not a one-word topic. So it's not enough to just write one sentence to actually explain what is happening in the essay. So what we do is that, first of all, we identify what the topic is majorly about. If we look at the question before, this question is about homeschooling and modern society, and if they can coexist together. That is the major crux of the question, right? So your general statement is always going to talk about either homeschooling or modern society. That is a big thing. Okay, and it has to be a very simple sentence. For example, something like how homeschooling has been a traditional mode of institutionalized education in previous years or like in early decades. Okay, you can try with that. Or you can talk something about modern society and how it is completely dependent on different types of educational institutions. Now, this simple sentence, that one sentence, is your general statement. That is all you need to do. You only need to start with the topic, only mention what that major crux of the matter is, and don't not say anything else. That is it. Your general statement is done and over with. After that, you have to reframe the question. First of all, if you're talking about introduction, you have introduced the topic, right? You have talked about, okay, so this is what I'm going to talk about in the essay after that. Now you need to actually introduce the question in that particular topic, as it's not a one word topic, right? It's a whole sentence. So you need to reframe the question, whatever was there, into new words and then write it here. You can write it in any way. You can say many people opine that homeschooling is outdated and should not be considered as a better mode of uh, education in this era, or something like that. Anything would work. Just do not use the same exact words that were there in the question, because that would give a bad impression. You always need to reframe a sentence in one way or other and then add it after a general statement. What we will do is that your general statement will brief upon the topic. Your question reframe will tell us about the question. Now you will give a thesis statement. The thesis statement will be taking your own opinion in it. So here you will very clearly state that my opinion is that homeschooling can be appropriate for certain students, or for certain it might not be. Maybe your opinion is that homeschooling is completely outdated and should be eradicated from everyday life, or something that is accepted as normal. So this is your thesis statement. This is where you give your opinion because the question has asked for it. If you take a step back and actually look at what we have done, we have appropriately introduced our whole essay. First, the general statement in which you introduce the major topic. Then the question reframed where you introduce the question, as in what you're going to cover in that big topic. After that, your thesis statement, what your essay is going to cover, as in what your opinion is and what are the points that you're going to discuss in your body paragraphs. You're not going to mention the points, obviously, but you're going to introduce. Are you going to take the side of the homeschooling? Are you going to take side of traditional schools? Are you going to take side of like both of them? So whatever is happening in the body paragraph, you just introduce that in your thesis statement. This forms your perfect introduction. Let us take a sample answer to this that I've written here. Now, in this is a longer side of introduction. I want to repeat again, do not get scared by this. You can obviously write a 3 to 4 sentence introduction, and that is completely fine. Okay, so let us actually take a look at this and identify the different parts. So it starts with a general statement that is, the modern world has glorified certain specific character traits such as competitiveness and confidence. Many individuals believe that if students are homeschooled, they would fail to progress in the real world as adults because they would not be used to such an environment. You can see the first sentence was a general statement about modern society and how it is, dependent on certain traits that are actually missing in homeschooling. Then I reframed the question and also linked it to the general statement till here. Right. So it was talking about how homeschooling, many people do believe that it isn't appropriate anymore and it will not work out because they are not actually incorporating certain capabilities that are considered a necessity in this era. After that, I just give my thesis statement. I believe that homeschooling has both positive and negative aspects to it. Every youngster is different, and parents should make a calculated decision keeping in view their own child's capabilities. That means I'm going for a 50-50 approach. Yes, homeschooling is bad in certain aspects, but for some students, it must be considered. That means that it cannot be called outdated, it cannot be completely eradicated. Okay, so this was my thesis statement. So you can clearly see the distinction. I have introduced the topic in the first sentence. I've talked about modern world and what it needs. In the second sentence, I have reframed my question in a way that fits my general statement perfectly. And then I have given my thesis as in my inputs. The essay below will talk about only what I have said here. You always need to make sure that whatever thesis statement you give in your introduction, it directly impacts what you're going to write in your body paragraphs. It should not be polar opposite. You should not contradict yourself. For example, maybe in your introductory statement, you're saying, oh, I completely agree that yes, homeschooling should completely be gone and done away with. But in your body paragraphs, you devote one to saying how homeschooling is bad and another one to saying how homeschooling might have some good aspects. Now, if you say something like that, you see, you're going for a 50-50 approach, but that was not reflected in your introduction. That will actually decrease your band score. Make sure that you take a very clear stand on this and write your body paragraphs. Beneath that, you do not actually stray away from something that you have already stated. Now, introduction is clear. Let's move on to the second part and also the third part of your body paragraph. That is your body paragraphs of your essay. Now, body paragraphs basically contain all the points and all the things that you need to mention in your essay. These are the major component of the essay. You can include more than 2 paragraphs too. You can say 3 or 4 if you have enough time, and if you're a fast typer or writer, that is completely possible and it's not discouraged at all. But to be really honest, as you're only given 40 minutes and you're only required to write 250 words, there is no need to write more than 2 body paragraphs. There is never a need to do that. So it is actually kind of unnecessary because they are only expecting a certain length of words, right? And it only matters the more you write, the more there are chances of you making spell errors or maybe grammatical errors, or you might face a problem with vocabulary because you need to use new words for everything over and over again. So in certain aspects, it actually, backfires writing too much content because there in IELTS exam, they are looking at the quality of the content. They are not looking at the quantity. They do not care if you've written 700 words. If those 700 words are not written as well as you could have written the first 250 words, they will not care. They will give you a bad score. Okay. So you just make sure as you're planning out your body paragraphs, you are doing it very carefully. Now, the content that you write in your body paragraphs vastly depends on the kind of question you have. But there is a structure that can be followed in almost all types of questions and all types of essays, and which is this. This is only a structure for a body paragraph. I know it looks scary, but I'll show you an example and it will be very clear. First of all, let's actually understand what happens here. So in IELTS, it's not about how many points you give, it's about how well you explain a certain point. That is it. They do not want like 10 different reasons why homeschooling can be bad. They want one or two reasons explained really well why it can be bad. So, if you're talking about just homeschooling or any body paragraph, you're always going to first of all introduce what that body paragraph is going to be about. Are you going to talk about the advantages of homeschooling? Are you going to talk about the disadvantages of homeschooling? If in the very beginning you have already stated you're only going to talk about, let's say, advantages of homeschooling, that's a 100% approach, 100% negative contradiction. That is, you're 100% disagreeing whatever the statement was. In that case, you don't actually need to introduce the second body paragraph. You can only introduce the first one because then you're only continuing with the one thing. But as I've taken 50-50 approach, as I discussed before, I'm actually going to introduce that. Okay, in this body paragraph, I'm going to talk about the advantages, and in the next one, I'm going to talk about the disadvantages. This is important because they need to know what that body paragraph is dedicated to. After that, state one point. That's it. Just one point. You do not need to state anything more. One point is enough. Just let's say if you're talking about homeschooling and we're talking about the positive impacts of it, then in that case, you can say something like how homeschooling can make a child feel more, comfortable because you're in a friendly environment. Now that's just the introduction. That is just like not the introduction. That's just a you stating the point. After that, you have to explain it. As in, you have to state that how many students actually feel uncomfortable when they are in different schools because of the competitive era, and everyone has a different mindset, so they might not be fit for the traditional educational system that is being followed till now. After that, give an example or a situation. Now, when we talk about example or situation, I do believe that it's a very good approach to actually include one in each body paragraph. Do not include more than one example because then it will look too cluttered, but do include one. In a question like this, you can take it from your own side that there are many students who maybe they are differently abled, and many schools don't actually provide resources for them to feel comfortable in their environment. That is the reason why it's better that they are homeschooled in certain cases, while in others, they might prefer to be out. So obviously, like whatever your approach, just give an example or situation according to that. Don't make it very personal. Don't talk about like your brother or your best friend and something like that. Don't do that. But yes, give an example or a situation to concrete your point. So basically, you stated a point first, then you explained it, and then you gave an example to foolproof it. After that, you just state another point. You don't need to explain it. You don't need to give an example. You can just state another point. As in, after explaining how it is, it might make people's children feel more, you know, friendly and more comfortable. Moreover, you can say that, yeah, children also get a chance to move at their own pace and don't feel that competitive. So they don't feel like they have to, compete with someone else, which is great for their mental well being. Then you have just stated a second point, that is enough, then conclude it. So these are the reason why I think that homeschooling is a great opportunity for many students that require it. That's it. So that was your one body paragraph. It sounds like a lot, but if you actually look at it, it is structured in a way that will definitely appeal to you as test checkers. So it's kind of like you first of all introduce a point, then you explain that point, then you give an example, then introduce a second point, and then you conclude it. That is it. If we look at a sample answer for this. I have actually colored it in different colors so that it is very clear where one thing starts and another thing stops. So here, let's start reading it. To begin with, the advantages of educational institutions. That's it. That's my introduction of the body paragraph. I'm going to begin with the advantages. Students studying in schools are taught and trained by professionals. That's the first advantage of actually studying in proper schools, that they are actually being trained and taught by professionals, which is a great thing. Okay, so I've stated the introduction of my body paragraph, then I've stated the introduction for my, the point that I'm going to discuss. There are many proven scientific approaches that produce good, effective results, and without these techniques, parents who teach their children at home have no chance. This is an example. Oh, sorry, not an example, an explanation. Yes, they are being taught by professionals, but how is that advantageous? Because they are definitely more well trained than our parents would be if they're going to teach us. And there are many techniques that are actually used in teaching that only professionals know, and people who are not trained well, they would not know. Now, then I've given an example of what one of these techniques would be. Associative learning is a good example of such a technique, showing the juvenile images while learning the alphabet. For example, A for apple and B for boy makes it easy to remember the letters faster and more easily. Now, this is the end of my first point. Right, I've introduced it, then explained it, then I gave an example. You can see that there is always a difference between how we explain a point, because then we just make it relevant and we explain it in depth, and then we give an example to concrete it. After that, let's start with the second point, which is not only this, because these centers of learning hire an individual for each subject, the educators there are highly specialized, handling the pupils and their doubts. So then it's about specialization, how they are obviously specialized in each of their subjects, and then the students can actually ask their doubts much more freely because these people know everything about that certain subject. This helps the learner understand the concepts easily and move on forward quickly to gather further knowledge. So that is how I've concluded it. This part is the conclusion, as in these are the reasons why traditional schools can actually be great, because they can help the child go faster and they will have an environment where they can learn as much as they want to. So if you look at it at whole, it is how a body paragraph is actually structured. First of all, introduce, then point, explanation, an example, point two, and then conclude. It doesn't have to be very complex. If you really think about it, it goes in a very smooth flow. Okay. Now, this was the end of your body paragraph. You're going to write your second body paragraphs in the same way, and then it will continue if you want to write a third or a fourth one. This is always how we write a body paragraph in an IELTS essay. Then comes the last part, which is the conclusion. Many students actually believe writing a one sentence conclusion for an IELTS essay is appropriate. I will say it very bluntly, it's not. No matter how many essays you read online which have only one sentence ending, it is not appropriate. No matter how many times you say, oh, but it was scored 9 bands or whatever, whatever, whatever. No, a conclusion means that you have to end the statement, as in you have to conclude whatever you have said and then give your own opinion about it, because this is a discursive essay. Discursive essays are those that, first of all, state whatever the questions ask you, and then you state your own opinion. Every single conclusion must include all the points that you have stated in your body paragraphs in one word form, and then it should include either your opinion, a solution, a warning, a regression, anything like that. You need to include something like that. That is very important. So always make sure when you're going to write a conclusion that you are going to, first of all, write all the points that you discussed in like one word form. So for example, we just discussed the advantages of studying in schools. So to conclude, students definitely face a lot of benefits if they're studying in traditional schools, such as learning from professionals, doing this, doing that, doing this. However, obviously, parents need to know what is best for their students, for best for their children, and then because of this, and that. Then you can say that my opinion is this. You have to restate your opinion because that is very important. Or you can also actually provide a solution, maybe a co-ed system of education, something like that. Anything that works in your favor, that should be done. Okay, so a sample conclusion for your IELTS essay would be: in conclusion, I have more trust in abilities and experiences of professional teachers than I do on my own. But many children might benefit more from learning in a familiar and friendly environment. Thus, guardians should always keep their young ones' interest in their mind while deciding what mode of education is best suited for the pupil. So, this is a good conclusion. Just like your introduction, your conclusion needs to be at least 2 to 3 sentences. It should never be a one sentence. No, you need to conclude it well, because conclusion is just as important as the introduction or body paragraphs. It is not something they can just write in like 30 seconds at the very end of the essay. Do not do that. Plan it out really well. Okay. So this was the end of your lecture about the things you need to take note of as you're going to write your structure. But there are certain things that are a little different from while you're writing the structure, but this should still be kept in mind while you're practicing. This is very important. And as I've written here, these are not suggestions. Okay, these are something that you should always, always, always practice and keep in mind as you're practicing. So the first thing is, as you're writing a body paragraphs, it is very common to use personal pronouns. So maybe you're talking about children, then you start using they. If you're talking about parents, you might start using he or she. If you're talking about anything, you might start using I, we, us. So using personal pronouns in essays should very, strictly be avoided. If you go back, like if you just go back a little and you look at the body paragraphs that I had written, I'll try to avoid using personal pronouns as much as possible. Because the thing is, IELTS is a very formal essay. The more personal pronouns you use, as in he, she, it, they, us, we, I, the more it will look like it is informal. Thus, you need to make sure you have a wide range of vocabulary for all the words that might be covered here. So, let's say, talk about in this, we normally use words for schools, we use words for teachers, and we use for words for children and for students. So there are a number of words you can actually, use as synonyms for these, and you should try your best to do so, because it is very important that you do not repeat a word over and over again, but also that you do not use personal pronouns. Then, as I just said, do not repeat the same words over and over again, use synonyms. Then, make sure that you exceed 250 words. Sometimes it happens that students find it hard to exceed 250 words in just 40 minutes, so they write less. But no, you should always, always exceed 250 words. Even 249 is a danger zone. Exceed it. It doesn't matter if you write 300, 400, no matter what. But you need to make sure that you are writing at least 251 words. Okay? Then make sure whatever you're writing is in direct relation to the question. Now, I've already said it at the very beginning of the lecture that I have recorded a separate lecture which talks about this and how there are different types of questions and how you can answer them. But as you're watching this one, do always make sure that whatever that question is, you're only going to answer that. You do not give irrelevant question answers. For example, here they were asking if homeschooling is actually, relevant in the modern society. Do you agree with this statement or not? Now, in a question like this, if you start talking about what we actually study or how education system can be changed, now these things are not relevant to the question. They were not asked. They just wanted homeschooling, modern society, yes or no. Anything extra is actually out of the task. It is out of the line. It is not needed. So it will negatively impact your bad score. Your task achievement is very important, and task achievement is surprisingly where most of the students lose their marks. So make sure whatever you're writing is in direct relation to whatever is asked in the question. Then use formal tone. So as I've already said, you cannot use any, he, she, it, they, but also you cannot use words like kids or short form of 100% cent%. That is also very informal. Try not to use any informal words or even slangs or abbreviations. That means not only just like lol or lmao, something also like can't or won't, do not, cannot, would not. These things should actually be written properly. You cannot use apostrophe to shorten it up. All right. So, last thing is practice a lot and keep a list of conjunctions prepared in your mind for the essay, just for convenience, because you're going to use a lot of conjunctions. Nevertheless, moreover, in addition to not only but also, these things are very helpful to get a good bad score. So, for example, you have stated one point already in your body paragraph. Now, to state the second point, you need a conjunction there. So, you need something like not only but also, or moreover, or in addition to that. Then when you're going to start your second paragraph, if you're making one contradiction, then nevertheless or however or on the other hand, these things are very important. You need to use these, and keeping a list of them, just at the tip of your fingertips is very easy. And because these are so often repeated in all the essays, only have to learn like 5 or 6 of them, and you can use them repetitively, because there you're only going to write one essay. So it doesn't matter if you only know 5 or 6 words for these. All right. So this was the end of our lecture. I hope that you learned a lot today and that you will keep on practicing for your IELTS essay. Thank you and have a good day. Continue.